currently present. I trust that you can all hear me. This is a committee meeting for community safety, cultural affairs, and sport. We have with us our procedural officer, Mr. Wasim Matthews. I have received an apology for member Christians, as well as Minister Albert Fritz. Members, I have been experiencing intermittent technological problems, but my phone will be on standby should I need to log into via my mobile device. But please feel welcome to the Standing Committee for Community Safety, Cultural Affairs and Sport, and thank you for availing yourselves for being here today. Regarding the rules for engagement, it is as per the ATC notice, but I do want to draw your attention that if you do wish to make any comment or raise a point of order, please use the raise your hand function, and then you will be duly noted. For our proceedings for today, we will be receiving a briefing from the Department of Community Safety on the role of the Western Cape Liquor Authority and the governing board and the vacancy requirements, and obviously for our committee to then discuss its plans for the shortlisting process. Members would be aware that they have been notified that the supporting documents were uploaded into the MS Teams folder for the Western Cape Liquor Authority. I will now note members to introduce themselves for the record.
Good morning, Chairperson Lorraine Botha.
Morning.
Good morning, Chair Khalil Brankais.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and everyone. Rachel van Vogel.
Morning.
Good morning, Chair and everyone.
Postman.
It's Member Kama.
Thank you, Member Kama and Member Bosman. We also have our capable IT with us for any technical issues. Within this meeting, we also have Mr. Simeon George, as well as Advocate Gerber in the meeting, as well as let me just admit, as well as Advocate Pillay. Furthermore, we have the acting CEO for the Western Cape Liquor Authority, Advocate Peterson. I'll now hand over to the acting HOD if she wants to make any opening remarks before I hand over to the department for their introductions as well as the presentation.
Chairperson, good morning to you as well as to the other members. I just want to indicate and apologize for our minister, who is currently at a caucus meeting this morning, as well as myself, because I will be leaving the meeting at 10 o'clock to join the cabinet meeting as well. But without further ado, then I am going to hand over to my colleagues who will introduce themselves. And just to indicate that Mr. Simeon George, who is our Chief Director for Security Risk Management and who acted as the CEO of the Liquor Authority for some time, will be doing the presentation on our behalf this morning. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Advocate.
Chairperson, can I proceed? Simeon George, yeah?
Thank you so much. For the record, I'll allow the Western Cape Liquor Authority to introduce themselves as well as any other member of the department.
Chairperson, also from the department, as the acting HOD has indicated, Simeon George, responsible for security risk management. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairperson. Advocate JC Gerber, yeah. I'm part of the focus group considering are dealing with liquor authority matters. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson. Letitia Peterson, Acting CEO of the Western Cape Liquor Authority.
Advocate Peterson, thank you so much for being here with us today. Members, I will now give over directly to the department for the briefing on the liquor board as well as the vacancies. Thank you so much. Over to the department. To the department, just to double check, should we, via our procedural officer, screen the presentation, or will you be screening it directly from your side?
Thank you for that, Chairperson. I think Mr. George would appreciate Mr. Matthews sharing. Mr. George, am I correct?
Let me see if I can get it on because I've made some last minute changes with your indulgence. Is it coming? Is it on
Yes,
showing?
we can see it. If you can just change it to take it to the first slide, Simeon. It's on the 5th slide. If you can take it to the first slide and also put it on slideshow, please. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Advocate Pillay. Over to Mr. George.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. George?
Yeah,
if you
I just,
please,
sorry.
Put it on the slide show.
Yeah, I'm now just confused where I'm.
Okay, it's on the top, on the top, file, home, and if you go down there, it says slideshow.
Let me just open it up again.
Apology, Chair.
You can just press F5.
There we go. Okay, thank you very
go.
much. Right. Chairperson, with your indulgence, thank you very much. Just a brief reminder in terms of the structure of the Western Cape Liquor Authority, you have the governing board, which is basically as a collective constitutes the accounting authority for the Western Cape Liquor Authority. And within the Western Cape Liquor Authority, of course, it's made up by the licensing tribunal that considers all applications for licenses and all license variations or whatever applications are provided for within the Western Cape Liquor Act. And then you have an administration that is led by a CEO appointed by the board, and then by virtue of being the CEO is then ex officio also a member of the board. And then in relation to matters heard by or considered by the Western Cape Liquor Licensing Tribunal, you have an appeal tribunal that will hear anything emanating from there. That's at the moment, we're fortunate to have a judge that considers these appeals coming from either the applicants or then those opposing, let's say, a license that was granted. I'll move over to the next slide. The Western Cape Liquor Authority Governing Board, at the moment, or as provided for in the Act, consists of 7 members. 2 vacancies have arisen over the last few months as a result of 2 resignations. These resignations included the chairperson, Advocate Sidaki, and then also then one of the other board members. I think also then a representative, I can add at this point, that indicated, suggested that there was representation as far as disability is concerned. I just thought I need to mention that as well. The requirements in terms of how we go about filling these positions and what is required in terms of the Western Cape Liquor Authority Governing Board, it's outlined in Section 3 of the Western Cape Liquor Act. And as it currently stands, there are basically 5 remaining members. So it's very important that the remaining members basically all attend in terms of any sittings of the governing board. Then just to say that in terms of the board consists of 6 members who have appropriate knowledge, and this is basically an important provision to be considered by the Standing Committee, appropriate knowledge of or experience in systems and processes for ensuring proper accountability, probity, and openness in the conduct of the business of an organization, and then one member at the very least who ought to have appropriate knowledge of or experience in dealing with the combating of the negative social consequences of the abuse of liquor. And they are all appointed on a part-time basis by the minister in accordance with the prescribed procedure after considering the recommendations of the standing committee. This is exactly what we are busy with right now, Chairperson. I can just also say that the one member that's provided as required by the Act, there is such a member still currently serving. More specifically, Dr. Platsky was the person appointed with the appropriate knowledge of or experience in dealing with the combating of negative social consequences. I just thought that it may be useful to mention that to the standing committee. And then just in terms of the procedure as provided, the head of Department of Community Safety publishes a notice in the Provincial Gazette and at least 2 newspapers in the province inviting nominations. This has been done. The head of the department is then, upon receipt of all the nominations, submit those to the Minister of Community Safety, indicating which nominations meet the prescribed criteria in terms of the Act. The Minister is then required to inform or refer this list to the Speaker, who then refers it to the Standing Committee, and this is an outcome of that as previously indicated. The Standing Committee then needs to recommend to the Minister, after evaluating all candidates, as to their suitability for appointment. And then just to say that subsection 4 requires the appointment to take into account race and gender as well. And so in relation to the 2 members that have resigned, you had, of course, the chairperson, who is a black advocate at the bar, and then a disability member of the board, a member representing disability. Thank you. And then there's an affidavit applicable in terms of that would speak to specifically eligibility and disqualification in terms of the Act. And the Standing Committee has to consider the following. Before being appointed by the Minister as a member of the board, the candidate must submit an affidavit to the Minister in which such candidates declare that he or she is 1, eligible for such appointment, and B, is not disqualified from such appointment. And when making the recommendation to the Minister, the Standing Committee should ensure that those that are recommended are in fact eligible and not disqualified in any way. Information on disqualification, such as insolvency, can during the interview stage only be obtained from asking the candidate the question. Okay. And then in terms of eligibility for appointment as provided in terms of section 4, the following must be noted. In order to be eligible for appointment, a person must have attained the age of 25, no less, must be a citizen of the Republic of South Africa, and then, of course, linked to that, permanently resident in the province, and we should not be disqualified in terms of section 5 of the Act. And then finally, in terms of section 5, the disqualification just referred to, there's the detail in respect thereof. Persons would be disqualified from being appointed, continuing, or acting as members of the board if in the preceding 10 years they have been convicted of an offense in terms of this Act, which means it relates to, I think a lot of it relates to the illicit dealing in alcohol, for instance, or similar legislation that may speak to the subject. B, anyone in the preceding 10 years, whether in the Republic or elsewhere, has been convicted of theft, fraud, forgery, the uttering of a forged document, perjury, or any offense under the Corruption Act, or the prevention and combating of corrupt activities, or any offense of which dishonesty is an element. This is understandable because as the accounting authority for the Western Cape Liquor Authority, governance is a key issue to be considered. Then in terms of further slide, it speaks to the disqualification, honorable members, is also then unrehabilitated insolvent persons or anyone who is subject to any legal disability, meaning anybody that's precluded by any other legislation from serving in a position of trust, or I think would then be affected by that. And anyone who in the preceding 10 years have been removed from any office of trust on account of misconduct or dishonesty. Bear in mind, this is not only, it goes beyond just simply a record as far as criminal activity is concerned. It speaks to you holding an office in whatever institution, in whatever form, and then being dismissed from that position as a result of misconduct or dishonesty. And then any sitting political office bearer is also excluded from serving on the board, or disqualified, I should say. And then there, more specifically also, anyone who, whether personally or through his or her spouse, family member, partner, or business associate, has acquired a direct or indirect financial interest in any liquor business or establishment, or has any interest in any business or enterprise that may conflict or interfere with the proper performance of his or her duties as a member of the board or in any license issued under this act. And then for the purposes of this section, an indirect financial interest does not include an indirect interest held through any fund or investment if the person holding such interest has no control over the investment decisions made in respect of that fund or investment. In other words, the few shares that I might hold in SAB, for that matter, will not disqualify me. Then the powers and functions of the governing board, maybe just to touch on that briefly, honorable members and chair. The board has the power and functions conferred or imposed on it by the Act and must manage the business of the authority. Bear in mind that the CEO forms part of the board, and in that is the critical link for the day-to-day operations, of course, and may exercise the powers and must perform the duties conferred or imposed on the authority by this Act or any other law, excluding powers or duties conferred or imposed specifically on the Liquor Licensing Tribunal. And of course, just note there to note that no interference with decisions on specific applications, or generally on the LLT for that matter, or the appeal tribunal. That remains off limits, of course, because that process, which is a quasi-judicial or kind of process, should not be interfered in any way. And then may appoint committees consisting of members of the board. The Western Cape Liquor Authority has a few committees that it has established in order to execute its mandate. Then just maybe to touch on some of the powers and functions that have already been that are conferred upon the Western Cape Liquor Authority Governing Board, Section 16. The board is entitled to appoint members of the Liquor Licensing Tribunal, so they screen applicants and nominations received for any vacancies there. Also, oversight over the administration of the Liquor Licensing Tribunal, that is the function of the board as well, of course. Appointing the CEO of the Liquor Authority, as indicated earlier, as well as the secretary to the Liquor License Tribunal, and all employees to enable the authority and the appeal tribunal to function. And then also it determines a code of conduct. It is required to determine a code of conduct for all employees of the Western Cape Liquor Authority. I recall that being concluded and revisited last year as well. And also annually to submit an annual report to the Minister on the dealings or the business of the Western Cape Liquor Authority. Chairperson and honorable members, that then basically outlines in brief the process as far as the filling of the two vacancies are concerned. Just to indicate, maybe the entire board process will commence again shortly in terms of post, I think, March 2021, and this process will be repeated in terms of all members for of the governing board. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. George. Before I hand over to members regarding questions, maybe just a first question in terms of, we are now 2 months prior to to the end of 2020. And if this process is going to be repeated within the first quarter of next year, in my mind, or to my mind, it would appear that could it not be done in one go, if you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, absolutely. I think the department was grappling with that. I think in consideration with in discussions with the minister. Maybe if I will ask if Yashina, if the acting chair, head of department, I'm sure she, in terms of the deliberations, this decision was made based on a number of factors. So, with your permission, Chairperson, I would request that Advocate Pillay respond to that. Thank you.
All good. I have noted Advocate Pillay's hand as well as Advocate Gerber. Advocate Pillay, you may go.
Thank you, Chairperson. If you'd allow me to proceed, just to inform you, there is some movement behind me. I'm sitting outside the cabinet venue and there's a kitchen behind me. So please excuse me. Just to indicate, yes, we did take that into consideration, Chairperson. However, we are currently busy with the amendments to the Liquor Act. And we did think that it would be critical and crucial at this stage to have the additional members brought on board at this time. So we have full capacity in relation to the board when we take this important legislative process forward. So that was our main consideration in terms of where we are, also in relation to the lockdown period. And we've the stats are showing us that every time alcohol is unbanned, there's an increase in the murder rate. So the Western Cape Liquor Authority has a critical role to play in relation to the deliverables of the Western Cape Safety Plan, in relation to the alcohol harms reduction as well. And therefore, we thought we should capacitate the board fully at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. To rephrase, the two vacancies are then key towards the deliverables in terms of what the Liquor Authority is wanting to achieve. Hence, it is needed. That is what you are saying, Advocate?
Yes, Chairperson, that's why we decided not to wait until next year, but have the two members come on board at this time now.
Okay. Thank you so much, members. Based on the presentation and the input that we have received, do you have any questions at this stage? I will take a round of questions. Maybe if I can kick it off, and if Mr. George can stop sharing the screen, members would have received the presentation as well. But thank you for the presentation, Mr. George. I see Member Kama.
Thank you very much, Chair, and greetings once again. Let me welcome the presentation. Chair, I might have missed it, but I want to check because I saw when Mr. George was speaking about the we make the recommendation. I want to understand the process. We make the recommendation, and then the minister has to appoint. Now, what I want to understand is with the candidates that we have now, what process has happened to arrive at the number of the candidates that we have? Have they been screened to ascertain that they do not fall under any of those categories, which would have led to them being disqualified from the process? And based on the response that I will get from that answer, I then want to understand as to exactly what is required from us as the committee. Are we required to recommend the exact two names, or are we required to recommend a list that would have agreed upon as a committee, well, in terms of what number is that? And after that, what would then be the grounds of what is then the process? Let me not ask it like that. Let me rephrase and say, what would then be the process in terms of us submitting the names to the minister? Will the provincial minister also again required to again go check if these people do not fall in those categories that would lead to them being disqualified? Thanks, Chair. I hope Mr. George gets the sense of what I'm trying to get to. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Member Kama. Member Malikaya, I see you, and then Member Bosman.
Thanks, Simon. Greetings to everyone. So, I was not there when the introduction was done. Sorry for that. But I've seen and heard the presentation. Mine is on the criteria and as well as that part of disqualification. If I hear correct, there is that refers to, it is page 10. I'm not sure in terms of slides what slide number was that, but it talks around the issues of dishonesty, of which I strongly believe one of our panels that dealt with the selection of candidates was hell-bent in terms of not meeting any understanding because of failure to disclose assets. And then the non-disclosure, then the committee ended up getting the information through their own interrogation and everything else. Now we talk about dishonesty in what context? Because we do not want to find ourselves in a similar situation as the previous panel that could end up appointing somebody with questionable credentials and financial background. If we can be clarified as far as that, because if a person might have offshore accounts and offshore assets that are not disclosed to South Africa or to South African Revenue Services, what does that mean for a person who might be serving in this particular board? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Member Bosman.
Chair, I just wanted to ask, in response to the comment made by Advocate Pillay, what are the chances of these two members realistically, in terms of all the administrative processes being completed in the next 60 days or so? What are the chances that they will realistically start before January? And what does that appointment process look like? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Bosman. Let me just latch on to that question. In terms of the time frame to the department, in terms of the recommendation from the Standing Committee, is there an envisaged date in terms of when the Standing Committee should be providing its recommendations in terms of the candidates to the department? Thank you. Over to the department.
Thank you, Chairperson. I am going to request Mr. George and especially Advocate Harper to come in relation to the procedure going forward. If I could request Advocate Harper to come in first, please, and Mr. George can add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Chairperson, as soon as the Standing Committee, the sooner the Standing Committee makes a recommendation to the Minister, the appointments can be done. So it all depends. There's no specific date for this, but it all depends on how long it will take for us to get the recommendation from the Standing Committee, and then the Minister can make the appointment. Thank you.
Through you, Chairperson, could I ask Advocate Harper to also answer some of the other questions that were posed by members, please, and then Mr. George. Thank you.
By all means.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I just want to refer to slide 6, where it says deals with the affidavit that's before being appointed by the Minister. After the Minister received the recommendation and he has decided to appoint certain, he will require an affidavit from that specific member to say about the eligibility and disqualification And then we said when making the recommendation to the Minister of Standing Committee, should ensure that those that are recommended are eligible and not disqualified. And that is the duty of the Standing Committee now. That information is not known now about insolvency, etc. And during the interview stage, in the questions put to the candidates, that information you should ask the candidate about your insolvency, everything is mentioned in Section 5 about disqualification. Should make sure that that is okay, and then also about funding interest in businesses, liquor businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I would ask Mr. George if he can come in as well. Thank you.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Maybe just to say, I think the Act outlines broadly what needs to happen. In terms of the exact detail of the process and how the Standing Committee would like to see that happen, a lot of it will be, the Standing Committee is at liberty to decide how best to do that. For instance, they can ask for additional information to be submitted. They can actually, Chairperson, decide how you feel what you would require to feel comfortable around that. But as Advocate Gerber has indicated, our first line of guarantee is the fact that the person makes a sworn affidavit, because that can be held against the person for their going forward at all times, which means if any information comes to the fore that suggests that the information provided was incorrect and blatantly false for that matter, there's immediate remedy as far as that is concerned, because the removal of such a board member would then become possible in terms of, again, just following a process, but it will be possible. So the absolute, the first line of defense is actually extracting that very specific sworn affidavit to that extent. So I do understand Honourable Member Kama's question in this regard. There are other aspects that he has also touched on, which I would like to respond to. One is the nominations made to the minister basically then could be what you decide those to be. You could, for instance, like any selection panel, then suggest it would be the specific 2 individuals, or if you're comfortable with 3 or 4, I think there's nothing prohibiting suggesting that the minister could make a decision or make a selection based on 1, 2, and 3. I didn't see anything that precludes that from actually happening, because it doesn't state specifically. It must, I think, there's room to interpret it in that particular way, but Advocate Gerber could respond to that if he feels different. It's just that my reading of it it doesn't exclude that specifically. Then, in terms of the criteria and non-disclosure and the questionable things, I think that has been also covered. It was also asked by Honourable Member Marikaya. So I think I've answered that to extent. And then realistically, what can be expected of the 2 members should their appointment be made? I think also it latches to what the chairperson has said. So I'll respond to the chairperson's question first. I think the process must remain thorough, chairperson. So as long as it takes, but as soon as possible. I know I may not be helping, but if you're uncomfortable, then certainly don't make such a question, a nomination until you're satisfied with the nominations that you proceed. So if that takes another 3 or 4 weeks, then so be it. The other aspect by Honourable Member Bosman is, yes, I mean, it is a short period of time, but I think also it opens up other possibilities that that were not alluded to, and that is, should we be able to have new members for another 3 or 4 months, it is then possible that the options going forward is also then presented to the structure and to the minister in terms of making appointments for the new board where there's a level of additional experience for that matter, which means then we proceed with only filling 5. But that option would, for instance, also be there. Thank you, Chairperson. I trust I've responded to. If not, just remind me of those aspects. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Advocate Gerber, I note you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I just wanted to mention that although Section 37 talks about the affidavit before being appointed by the Minister, I've got a pro forma of the affidavit and I can make that available to Mr. Matthews if the committee wants to make use of that.
Yes, please. Thank you so much. That will be appreciated. Members, is there any follow-up questions based on the replies that you have received? Or any new question that you would like to formulate and pose to the department? Mr. George, it seems that you've done extremely well together with the Advocate Belay and Gerber, seeing that there's no follow-up questions. Members, are you able to hear me? I'm not, I can see Advocate Belay is moving in the screen.
We can hear you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Kama. Members, seeing that there is no further questions, is there any concluding remarks from the department?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I would just like to say, should there be any other queries or inquiries or any support that is required by yourself and other honourable members going forward with this process, we will gladly assist. And if you don't mind, Chair, I would ask Advocate Peterson if she would like to say a word or two, and if I could also then take this opportunity to congratulate the Liquor Authority for its clean audit outcome. So, Chairperson, we are doing something right. If you don't mind, Chair, may I ask if Advocate Peterson would like to say a word or two?
Thank you very much, HOD, and thank you through you, Chair. I just want to take this opportunity also to thank our custodial department of community safety for all of their support throughout this process, and also for prioritizing this in terms of the advertisements and all the other support that has been provided in the process in appointing these two new governing board members since the vacancies have arisen. From my side, and I also like to speak on behalf of the rest of the Western Cape Liquor Authority, and thank you also for all the support that has been provided to us also throughout this year. Yeah, we do appreciate it, and also in these perilous times that we find ourselves in, where liquor has become a very contentious issue, we thank, we do heavily rely on our custodial department for their support, and we have been receiving that greatly throughout this year. So I just want to say thank you very much, and also to yourself, Chairperson, and the honourable members. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Advocate Peterson. We're looking forward to the journey ahead and engaging you further, and well done on the clean audit. Advocate Pillay, I trust that that is now in order from your side. You have 22 minutes extra for a cup of coffee prior to your next meeting. But thank you so much for being here. Mr. George, Advocate Gerber, thank you so much. Advocate Pillay, please, thank you. May you have an amazing day further. We will then be in contact with you further.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Bye-bye.
Members, I trust that you are well, still considering it's only 39 minutes in. We would now have to resolve on a process leading forward. We are on the 20th of October. There is a number of these constituency days coming up as well, and we've heard that we need to submit, or it is requested from us as a committee in order to conclude our process, but no date has been given from the department side. Before I outline a potential process moving forward, is there any comment from any of the members at this stage?
No comment, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Botha.
Put your process forward.
Thank you so much. Members, for our committee to move forward in terms of the recommendations, there is a number of questions, firstly, that we would have to answer, but also then to see if we take this forward for us to engage not only with the Chief Whip, but with the programming authority as well, seeing that we are heading into a time where there is not very, where it's extremely tight in terms of the agenda. Is that okay with all of us? We have our procedural officer with us. We will then request the document, and Wasim already has that document that Advocate Gerber spoke to. But there is a number of questions before we make any resolution, just to feel where the room is at. Regarding the shortlisting of the candidates, our process to decide whether all candidates that we have received should be interviewed. We need to then finalize the duration of the interviews, how long we would want to interview each and every candidate. Also, the formulation of the questions. Would it be a uniform questions or not, or a number of questions that is drawn differently for each person? We need to decide on that. Also on the assessment and the evaluation mechanism that we need to adopt. But then also, given the virtual nature where we are currently finding ourselves in, whether the committee will keep the process broadcasted throughout or closed off using Rule 72. And then obviously the dates become more difficult because it would have to be discussed with the Chief Whip and the programming authority as well. Is there any comment from any member at this time? Are we all happy to take this forward? Member Botha and Member Bosman, Member Kama, in that order.
Chairperson, thank you very much. I want to sort of put it back to you and ask whether you have a framework already for all the comments that you put forward now in this going forward. If you have, you know, with the procedural officer already have some framework, put it forward so that we can see, and that would include all the timelines, I suppose. And then we can talk to that instead of us, each of us now giving a different way of doing it or giving different dates of availability. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Member Botha. Member Bosman.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I just wanted to ask, just to comment actually on the comment that you made around having the interviews closed. I think I'd argue for us to do it openly because this is quite a controversial body, especially during the COVID time and the restrictions that's been placed on the sale of alcohol. And I think it's in the public interest for members of the public to see how people are appointed to the authority. I think maybe the starting point should be that we get a list of the people that have made it past the first screening process, and then we develop a questionnaire and then set up the schedule for interviews. And I strongly suggest that we perhaps do these interviews in person instead of doing them virtually. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Kama.
Thanks, Chair. You know, I want to support the view by Member Bosman, but I'm also conscious of the time that we have. Perhaps if we can get an understanding, Chair, of how long it might take us to do all the screening process and all that before we arrive to the number of the candidates that would want to interview. Assistance chair with the procedural officer in terms of the available time that we have, and I think we also as members would on our side also have to commit to some time and give some time to this process, because I can imagine if the filling of the two vacancies is as important as making sure that the authority fully delivers its mandate. So it's something that would have to finish even before the festive season. So it's something, Chair, more or less of the month of November. So if we can get from your side and speaking to the chief whip, and I think I will leave that one off, whether it's going to be a live or closed session to you, Chair, and the advice that we get in terms of the implications thereof. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much. Member Botha, is that a new hand?
Yes, Chairperson, affirmative.
You may go.
Thank you. I just want to put another proposal forward in regard to this, that the panel for the interviews become the permanent members of the committee only. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Botha. Member Bosman and Member Kama and Member Botha, your comments is highly appreciated. Earlier on, I outlined possible scenarios, and I do like the proposal from Member Bosman to have it in person. I will bring in our procedural officer regarding the possibility of using the chamber. In such an instance, what would be required from us as a committee in order to get that going, but also for the procedural officer to come in terms of the possible process moving forward, the amount of applicants that that has been shortlisted a week or two ago. It has been sent to the committee as well as added into the MS Teams folder. But I'll bring in Mr. Matthews to speak to some of the points raised by the members. Mr. Matthews.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairperson. In terms of the chamber, we will need dates so that we can obviously request the use of the chamber. I think the new program should be out later today or tomorrow. I'm not sure by how much it would have changed from the previous one. So the sooner we get the dates, the better, and that would indicate whether or not we can get the chamber, simply because there's so much activities taking place over the next reporting periods. In terms of the number of applications, the lists forwarded by the department or by the minister's office indicated 19 candidates. And the department also gave the CVs, the nomination forms, as well as a summary of each candidate, indicating subtly whether or not they are whether the applicants appear to meet the requirements or not. So in the past, I think there were about 4 to 5 questions per candidate that was posed. The previous committee had, I'm just saying this as a basis, given that there was a framework that was used previously, and this committee can then build on that or change it completely. But there were about 4 to 5 questions, 4 of which were specific, 1 which was open for each candidate, and each member would then score that particular candidate per question, and then eventually the sum total per candidate would give you what each candidate has scored, and the committee's list will be then taken from them from that. The department presented on the disqualification of appointment, the measures in place or the criteria in place. So what the previous committee did was, based on section 5.1, we reworded a declaration where each candidate had to, or interviewer had to complete it before the interview. So committing and confirming whether or not they were insolvent, where there's any record of misconduct or dishonesty, and so on and so on. So before each interviewee was interviewed, they had to submit a signed copy of that declaration. Yes, also the issue of whether or not the meeting should be closed or segments of it should be closed, that is, of course, entirely a committee decision. Remember, the meeting or segments thereof can only be closed with a strong motivation from the committee. So whether or not it's open, it's entirely up to the committee to do so. I think previously it was just a question of, because there were uniform questions, they didn't want interviewees to necessarily know the questions beforehand. But of course, I think previously other committees have taken a different approach. So I would recommend that the committee resolves on its plan. So state, we will keep it open for such and such a reason, or we'll close it for such and such a reason. We will have X amount of questions. In that way, the process that the committee follows is documented, because as you've heard, you will be doing this again for the new term of the governing board, as well as in future if there are any other vacancies that need to be filled. Then at least the committee has already developed its own way of moving forward with such processes. That's all from me, Chair. I'm not sure. The only thing about dates is that it would be what is on the parliamentary program. There's lots of constituencies, constituency weeks ahead, and I think there might be some changes to the program. But whether or not the committee wants to commit to dates now or first see what is available on the program, that is, it's up to you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews, for your input. Members, any further comment from you based on the comments from Mr. Matthews? Wasim, may I just double check and get your input on it? Seeing that we have received 19 applications, should all 19 be interviewed?
Chairperson, this is, I think it was mentioned in the presentation where the committee must evaluate. It's one of the points. The standing committee must make recommendations to the minister after evaluating all candidates as to their suitability for appointment. Now, that is not defining how the committee must do anything. Lots of other standing committees have, and I think very recently, dealt with board memberships and appointments and so on, and recommending persons for appointment. That is why I said the committee should resolve what its process is. So looking at the list of candidates, there are 19 candidates. There are summaries given by the department, and that is for the committee's consideration. It's not that you have to agree or disagree with what is being stated. If you go through all the CVs, it's up to the committee. If you want to shortlist that list, but you've thoroughly gone through the applications or gone through the CVs, that should also be considered evaluation. And the term evaluation is not defined. The steps are not being defined, what the committee must do, how many persons must be interviewed, and so on. It is a committee process. The standing rules allow for a committee to develop its or agree upon its own internal processes. And in the absence of it strictly saying that 100% must be interviewed, or that there should be a second phase of interviews, there doesn't seem to be any basis for that. I would recommend the committee to develop its own processes in terms of what it sees fit. You know, I'm not going to say that because of time you don't do 19, but it's in terms of you as a committee having evaluated the CVs, perhaps have to then question, do you need to interview 19 persons, or you have to interview 19 persons because the CVs are perhaps all on the same level, whatever the case is. So it's not clearly defined, it's a bit loose, but it says that the committee must evaluate, having evaluated all candidates. So how you define evaluation is it's your process, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matthews. Members, based on that opening one, in terms of the number of candidates, I feel that it should be not a full 19 that we are going to interview. If we want to get the best person, the best persons for the job, interviewing the full 19, I feel strongly based on the CVs, we would be able to shorten that list. Do I have consensus on that so that we can formulate a process in terms of how we shorten that list? Mr. Matthews, I see you.
Chairperson, if I may just share the document very quickly, because there was lots of information that was sent that's in the folders, because I've put each candidate, because each candidate has a CV and a nomination form. So that's why I've created the subfolders per candidate. But there are quite a few other documents that were also sent, the letter, the referral memo and all that. The following document, and I'm just sharing it, I'll just try to share it for the purposes of members seeing what it looks like. It's that document. So it shows all candidates, and there's a bit of a summary. So it's a guide, and reading that with the CVs, you can then decide on whether you want to do all 19 interviews. So.
Members, how do you feel in terms of shortening the list? And if we can then formulate a process in terms of how we will shorten that list? Is there consensus for that moving forward? Member Kama?
Thanks, Chair. Let me again apologize in advance. I might be too slow in understanding this morning, but I want to check because I support the idea that we must shorten the list, and also, you know, in terms of the time that we might be looking at and all that. But I want to understand, Chair, because, you know, shortlisting must be linked to the set requirements that were in the call for nominations. So I want to check if we have that, so that we can also use that in trying to make the 19 list shorter. But I support that we can't interview all of them. There should be a process of shortlisting or making the list shorter. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Member Kama. Member Botha?
Chairperson, hi. That 19 has all been screened from the original applications, right?
Yes. By the department.
So I would say that all 19 needs the opportunity to come for an interview.
I hear you on that one. Let me, members, Member Bosman, I see you.
Chair, I also just want to agree with Member Botha that these candidates have already gone through a screening process. and that we should give them all the opportunity to be interviewed, even if that interview is as short as 20 minutes.
Thank you, Member Bosman. Member Kama, is that a new hand?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Hence, I apologized earlier for being slow this morning. If the names were screened on the part of the department, I also support then that we should interview all the 19. I had an understanding that we need to also do that, but if they have been screened by the department, then I think we need to evaluate all of them for us to be able to then make the two or any number of recommendations that we're going to make. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, members. So we have consensus now that we are interviewing all the candidates. Mr. Matthews, that will then formulate part of our resolutions that all candidates as received via the department will be interviewed. The duration of the interviews, are we setting that at 15 to 20 minutes? Member Botha?
Chairperson, would that not depend on the number of questions in the pool, or in the pool? Would that not determine the duration or the time allocated?
Yes, but if we have, I'm just setting a 20-minute between candidates as well, so we know at least how many time or days potentially we would have to set aside. I'm sure we would be able to do it in one day.
Chair, may I request of you to consider half an hour, 30 minutes per candidate?
Thank you so much, members. I support that if we have half an hour set aside for each and every candidate, for example, 9 o'clock, candidate 1, 9:30, candidate 2, etc., etc. Would that be okay with each and every member? It might mean that one candidate is only interviewed for about 10 minutes because their answers are shorter than others. Yes, Member Bosman?
That's fine, Chairperson. I agree with that, but I think we might need to start a bit earlier, and I'm happy for us to start at 7:30 in the morning and get it all done in 1 or 2 days if that's possible. Just noting that there might not be enough time on the program.
Thank you so much. Member Botha, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in concurrence with that to start. We can start at 7:30. I don't have an issue with the time starting. What was the other thing that I wanted to say? Yes, Chair, and if it means that one person, just gives yes, no answers and it takes 10 minutes, then that is it. Then that person take. But also the other thing that I wish to ask is deliberations only happens at the end when all is said and done during the interviews.
Yes, thank you so much. Because what we could do is that in our notice to the applicant, we can inform them to be there half an hour before the time. So if we have X amount of members that are there before the time, we could potentially request them to be interviewed. I would assume that would be in order, Mr. Matthews.
Yes, sir, that's fine. Yes, Chairperson, that's fine.
Members, regarding the formulation of the questions, do we agree it will be uniform questions? Same questions for each and every one, but also where we have the one question in terms of what the department highlighted, where if there's anything that the applicant wishes to disclose, let me just, in terms of disqualification, where information on disqualification can only be obtained or asked during the interview stage. If that would be one of the questions, but then Would you all want us to agree now on a set of questions already? Or could I
Chairperson,
potentially, yeah?
I don't
Yes,
think
yes.
we should agree on the questions. I don't think we should agree on the questions now. I think maybe what we need to agree on today in a resolution is that the standing committee empowers you and the procedural officer to identify potential dates for the interviews, as well as to put an interview schedule together. We can then, as a committee, as members of the committee, have a round robin via email around the questions or interview grid, and then also with the process written up based on the discussion that we've had now. And that could be the way forward, in my opinion, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Bosman. Member Botha?
I support Member Bosman on this. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much. And then that will be the scoring will be in that document as well in terms of 1 to 5, for example, in terms of the evaluation. I trust that that is then in order with members as well. In terms of then that will be where we confirm the dates. As soon as possible, I will then engage the Chief Whip and the Programming Authority in terms of the dates. Once we have the dates, we will be able to confirm if we are able to then obtain the chamber, and in members that are permanent on the committee would form part of the panel. I trust everyone finds that in order, but as per always, if any other member wants to sit in and observe the process, he or she may be able to do so. Member Botha, I see you.
Chair, just a correction. Members that are permanent members would be the panel, not form part of the panel.
Yes, yes, would be the panel. Thank you so much, Member Botha. Members, I trust you find that in order. Mr. Matthews, are we covered? Do we have enough for me and you to go on in terms of the resolutions that you've jotted down for now?
Yes, Chairperson, the only thing is dates and availability. I cannot preempt what dates will be available. What would members be satisfied with doing it during constituency week if there are no other options? But we will have to look at the new program and then take it from there. I think it is the most logical step to take than to predict dates now, because I don't know what the new program looks like.
Yes. Members, based on the input from Mr. Matthews, I trust you find that in order and the recommendation made by Member Bosman. Do we have concurrence in that? Everyone?
In order, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Botha. That will, I hope I didn't miss anything, but that will then conclude that part where we have been briefed by the department in terms of the vacancies, and we have to a large extent resolved on a process moving forward. We are aware that the dates and the venue are to be confirmed, but we have a solid process moving forward for now. Thank you so much for the input and all your suggestions. Members, if we can go on to the last part of today's meeting, considering the draft minutes for 2 meetings, 25 August and 8th of September. The first one will be screened on the presentation on the screen now. Please check your attendance. We are on page number 1. It was the briefing with the Ombudsman. Page number 2. Do we have any member moving to adopt?
I move to adopt, Chair. Member Botha.
Thank you, Member Botha. We will go to the second set of minutes, the 8th of September. Page number 1. Page number 2. Is there any amendments or edits, or can we move to adopt?
No amendments, Chair. I move to adopt.
Thank you so much, Member Bosman. Members, that brings us to the end of our committee for, yeah.
I move to second both adoptions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Kama. Thank you so much. Members, that brings us to the end of our committee meeting. Thank you so much and for your attendance here today. A triple thank you to Mr. Matthews for ensuring that we were able to meet today and to outline a possible process moving forward with your input, members. I do appreciate Mr. Matthews and Mr. Daza, our IT support, that are always willing and able to assist. Between myself and Mr. Matthews, we will then take this forward and be in contact with you soonest. But I'm glad that we were able to plot a way forward in terms of what process we are adopting. It is highly appreciated. Thank you so much, and may you have a very good day. And I trust that I will see some of you later online or in the hybrid system. But thank you so much, members. Please have a good morning further.
Chair, thank you.
Baie dankie.
Tot ziens, voorzitter.
Mooi bly, baie dankie. Thank you.
Bye-bye.